It is the Doomsday Podcast, and Happy New Year to everyone. Werder and I back from a little bit of a break after Christmas Day, the Christmas Day game. The Cowboys did what they needed to do. They found a way to lose this game and kept Dak upright. They lose 34-17. And Ed, this one, other than Jadeveon Clowney's great play, this was a typically poor Cowboys defensive performance. They got gashed in the run. They got gashed in the pass game. Jackson Dart made them look bad with his legs. And then, of course, that little option pitch, the improvisation that he used to get the ball out to the tight end and embarrass the Cowboys defense even more than usual. So, Ed, I think we can now we've been talking all year about, especially in recent weeks, Eberflus, what's his future going to be like? Ed, we had Eberflus on at the start of the season. He was a great guest to have on. And now, Ed, it looks like we'll probably be looking to speak with the Cowboys' next defensive coordinator. It finally comes to an end today.
Yeah, and to put the whole thing into context, this has been an NFL season where 3 first-year head coaches, Mike Vrabel in New England, Liam Cohen in Jacksonville, and Ben Johnson in Chicago, are all leading teams that are going to make the playoffs. In the case of Liam Cohen, they win 13 games after they lost 13 games last year. Pretty much the same for Vrabel is a possibility. And so we've seen these first-year head coaches have enormous success right away, but not so for Brian Schottenheimer. His first season as an NFL head coach ends at 7-9-1, marking the first time Dallas has had consecutive losing seasons since the final 2 years of the Dave Campo era. You recall they went 5-11 3 straight years from 2000 to 2002. And then to your point about, the defense, they've allowed a franchise record 511 points this season, the first time they've ever been over 500, ever allowed over 30 points a game in 66 years of Cowboys football. The fewest interceptions in franchise history, just 6. They narrowly avoid becoming just the third team since the NFL merger in 1970 to avoid allowing 30 points at home, which they did, and 30 points on the road in the same season. Only the 1981 Baltimore Colts and 1973 Houston Oilers did that. The Cowboys allowed 30.37 points per game at home, but just 29.7 at home. They miss it by 0.3 of a point. I think the expectation after, the Giants are the 7th team to score 34 more points on the Cowboys. In fact, they scored 71 points in 2 games against Dallas this year with 2 different starting quarterbacks. I would be surprised if Jerry Jones at the end of this begins the review of the coaching staff and considers the changes necessary that he's vowed to make, that he's going to be convinced in any way that Matt Eberflus should figure prominently in that plan. And so I think in all likelihood, Jerry and the Cowboys are going to be looking for their 4th defensive coordinator in 4 years. This is a problem they've been unable to solve since 2020 when Mike McCarthy's first year. He hired Mike Nolan. They gave up the most points in franchise history that year. I think this is what Jerry will point to. That's what happened to Mike McCarthy. It happened again to Brian Schottenheimer. We went out and hired a new defensive coordinator. That year it was Dan Quinn. Had 3 years of exceptional defense. Pressured the quarterback, took away the football like no other defense in football. And then obviously last year, Mike Zimmer comes in. He ranks right up there, most points allowed in franchise history, and now Eberflus follows up. So 3 times in the last 6 years, that's happened. So it's more than just a coaching issue. It's clearly a front office issue. It's clearly a personnel problem, and we'll see if they can fix it in a short space of time. But I guess to the most optimistic Cowboys seasons and their ever overly optimistic, hopium-filled owner, if you look around at the NFL this year, I think there are, 4 teams that won 30% of their games last year who are making the postseason. So quick turnarounds happen in the NFL. but not so for the Cowboys this year, maybe next year.
It happened for the Chicago Bears, Ed, and they got rid of Matt Eberflus. So the Cowboys do that. I'm just looking for silver linings here. Ed, just to underscore your point, Jerry, before the game, was asked about Matt Eberflus. He said, don't blame this all on Flus. This took 5 or 6 years to get here. I can make a case for you that we haven't had a satisfactory defense for 5 or 6 years, really. And so ask about them having much better defense under Dan Quinn. Ed, we've talked about, the takeaways were much higher under Quinn. And then, of course, Quinn left to become the head coach of the Commanders. He said, quote, but we were porous when we got in the playoffs. This is Jerry talking about the Cowboys under Quinn. We were porous when we had to buckle up and stop the run. Dan did a great job. We really wanted to keep Dan. So I like
Well,
Jerry.
guess what, Matt? They've now figured out a way not to give up a single rushing yard in the postseason.
That's right. Just not show up.
The thing that Jerry, by Jerry's comment before the game today, that would suggest he even considers the Dan Quinn era a failure on defense. And guess who else they had when Dan Quinn started? Micah Parsons. So maybe there's symmetry in, assuming they do change defensive coordinators as they did in 2021. They drafted 12th in 2021. Right now, that's where they're scheduled to pick this year. They drafted Micah Parsons. So maybe they can get another elite pass rushing defensive end and the right defensive coordinator, and they can go win 12 games again for 3 years in a row.
That's right. And the Packers just kind of sit around and wait to see what the Cowboys are going to do. Oh, could Micah become available? Oh, Trayvon Diggs, we'll take him. I hadn't even had a chance to really sound off on Diggs and his departure as the now playing today for the Packers, by the way, as they got a ton of people who are inactive because today's game doesn't impact them for the playoffs, but apparently they were getting ready to put Trayvon Diggs on the field. All right, we got a lot to react to, Ed, and we're gonna have a man who's he's been with us throughout much of his several years. Doomsday. It is our former scout and Cowboys coach and scout, Glenn Stretch Smith. Z-Man, please play the music. All right, it is the Doomsday Podcast, and it's the Doomsday Podcast with our with Glenn Stretch Smith with us. You'll see him tonight on Sports Special WFAA. You'll see Ed tomorrow. I know Ed hopes this will just continue in the off season because he knows nothing more than those early Monday mornings there at 6:30 a.m. But Ed, you and I were just talking about a historically poor performance on defense by the Cowboys this season. It's likely that they will be looking for a new defensive coordinator. Where do we want to start? And by the way, let's not forget to get Stretch's take on special teams because while they had some of the good, they also had some of the bad, including a kicker, a brilliant kicker, but cannot seem to figure out how to get that right on the kickoffs, and that reared its ugly head today. But Ed, where would you like to point Stretch with the when it comes to starting on this defense, on the defensive side of the ball?
Well, I think that when you look at the total context of this Cowboys season, you're looking at Brian Schottenheimer's first year, Dak Prescott at age 32 and coming off an injury has this incredible statistical season, 4,500 yards, 30 touchdown passes. They have a 4,000-yard passer, a 1,000-yard rusher, 2,000-yard receivers for the second time in history, and yet again missed the playoffs. So to me, it gets harder and harder as a quarterback ages, to predict that he's going to remain healthy and performing at this level. And so this, to me, is just a huge organizational failure not to make the playoffs in this season and not to really ever be competitive. And I just wonder to what extent Stretch agrees with me on it being a total organizational failure.
Yeah, I agree with that statement. However, it's hard for me to, and I don't want to ride defense here, but I thought going into this season, I thought it's about an 8-win football team. So that's what I thought we had. Now, did I think the offense was going to play as good as they did? No. Did I think that Javonte Williams would be hitting a home run? And I'm not talking about running the football. I'm talking about from a pass protection standpoint, he's as good as any back in the NFL protecting the quarterback. Did I think that George Pickens all of a sudden was going to get just a tank full in his Shiva getter? Not really. And I didn't predict that, but he did. And guess what? He went out and showed you what he could do. And so then all of a sudden the offense took off. Now, I agree with what you're saying because they moved on. They decided to move on from a generational pass rusher. Did I think at the beginning of the year they were going to get 2 really good defensive tackles in here? No, but they did. And then all of a sudden, kind of we got to that midway point in the season, and they take care and come back and beat Philadelphia. Kansas City comes in here and they get that win, and boy, all of a sudden everybody's thinking, well, we got ourselves a rolling ball of butcher knives football team here. At the end of the day, I look at the play. The one play in this football game really was a microcosm of the entire season for me, and that was it's 3rd and 19, and Carson they run an out and up, a 3-pump, and Carson, it's 3rd and 19. He's running an 8-yard out route. He bites on the out, which means he plants his foot, sticks and drives on it. He's got the deep third. And then when he does, he thinks, uh-oh. Then the receiver wheels it up. He has to go blowing it just to catch him. The ball's underthrown. He hits him, PI. And you're thinking, how can this happen in 18 weeks of a football season? How can we have a defensive back bite on 3rd and 19 on a speed out? And it really is. It's to me, it's something that just it's a secondary that is played so poorly. And I get it. Are they talented? As talented as they should be? No. But I'll tell you, we can line up 10 soldiers out there and at least get them to play the correct leverage, at least get them to play with the correct eyes, at least get them to play with the correct feet. And so when you're correcting these things this late in the season, everybody's disappointed. But at the end of the day, where I thought this team was about a 500 football team going into this season. And I say that because you had Diggs coming off of an injury. You had Bland coming off an injury. We didn't know what they really had in the secondary. Was Overshown going to come back? Wasn't he going to come back? Was Leofau going to fit with what Eberflus wanted to do? They didn't have an edge rusher. Sam Williams, I mean, it's just kind of been a guy. They've overpaid Fowler. Could Ezeraku come in here as a rookie and make a difference? He had kind of a rookie-style year. Were we going to think that Clowney was going to come out there and get after it? Hell no. But he did. And so there's so many things and so many variables, and I know I've given you a long answer to your question, probably too long. But
I'd like to withdraw that question if I could.
At the end of the day, it's a damn 500 football team. That's what they are.
Right, but if I would have told you that Dak was going to have the season he had, that Pickens was going to outperform CeeDee Lamb, that Javonte Williams was going to be a top 5 running back in football, they were going to be the 4th highest scoring team in football, you would never have said, well, the defense is going to be so awful, none of that's going to matter.
No, I wouldn't. I would have taken everything. It was in both of my front pockets and taken it to Vegas and bet it. You're right. And then they would have said, "Hey, kiss a rabbit between the ears," because that's about where I would have been without any money. So yeah, that's right where it is.
Well, the Cowboys lose this one 34-17. It's our final of the regular season. Looking back at some of this. A man who, interesting, Stretch had some comments earlier this season and ended up being very accurate about Jaden Blue. You finally got to see him in extended time on the field. And I would say if you're looking for positives from today, guys, Jaden Blue showed a lot of speed, had, I don't know, 70 rushing yards at halftime. And then Jadeveon Clowney, I mean, it's like good and bad news, right? It's like your most electric defensive pass rusher was a guy you had to get off the couch. Like your best.
He's 32 years old. He wasn't even on the team in training camp.
That's right. You had to bring him in off the couch.
He wasn't on the team when they traded Micah Parsons. They went and got him because they traded Micah Parsons.
Yeah.
So what are you saying, Ed? He needs to start eating dinner with us at 4:30 at Luby's every afternoon? Is that where you're going with it? You know, what I think the positive, Matt, that you miss is, let me tell you something. Spanford is a football player. I mean, he did some things special teams wise. I love seeing him getting some playing time. So I think he's a positive. You make the comment, Blue showed you some acceleration, how he can run with his eyes. We saw an offensive line that I thought first half wise blocked really well. An offensive line coach and Clayton Adams, who I like what they do. I like what they do from an angle standpoint in the run game. I love what they do, pulling a guy out of the core of the protection to max protect at times. So there is some positives over there. But, fellas, I mean, seriously, to have to score 34 to 35 a game in a league that has a damn running clock, that's hard to do every week. It's hard to do.
Yeah, and they weren't able to do it. They weren't able, and I think we looked at it, Ed, some of the numbers that when you added it up, they gave up just as many on the road at home. I think it matched up 30. I think they averaged 30 at home, right at 30 on the road. Ed was saying earlier, Stretch, over 500. I think it ended up with 511 points. Is that right?
511 points. It's the sixth highest point total ever allowed by a defense in the entire history of the NFL.
God,
yeah.
I mean, seriously.
So what's the solution? Obviously, they need different players, right? They got to get an edge rusher or two. They've got to get a middle linebacker. They've got to get corners, and in all likelihood, it's going to be with a new coaching staff. And you mentioned it when you came on. Special teams has been a disaster too. Really, the Cowboys are a one-phase football team. They either win. Can their offense score enough points every week to overcome what's going to happen on defense and special teams? And the answer is no, almost every week.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with exactly what you're saying. I mean, now, you know, here's where the pressure becomes. I think with Green Bay's loss today, is that right? That it looks like they're going to pick somewhere around 12 and 20. Does that sound right?
Well, they're going to pick at 12 in the first with their own pick. The Green Bay pick will depend on how far they go in the playoffs.
Yeah,
but so yeah,
it's going to be at least 19, right. And it could be 32 if they win the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Well, you asked me to bet earlier, and I don't like betting on the two-leggeds, but I will. I'll bet on this. It won't be 32. How's that? But I do think. I think in general, probably somewhere around that 20-ish area. The point I'm making is immediately the pressure goes right to that department because they must hit at 12 and 20, and they got to hit with starters. I mean, they've got you mentioned what they've got to have on the defensive side. Now, I hope that they take and bring Clowney back. Yeah, give him an AARP card and bring him back in here at 33 years old. I'm fine with that. But I think you've got to think about what are you going to do. You have two box safeties. So you're going to have to get a ball hawking safety. You've got to have a corner. You got to have a linebacker. And I mean, hell, just check D, all of the above on that side of the football. The thing that, and I never advocate for this, but if you're going to make a defensive change, you've also got to allow that guy to bring his guys in here. And so,
well, how about letting the head coach bring his guys in?
Yeah, that's it too. You go to your church and I'll go to mine. I got it. You let the head coach make the call. Yes, Ed, for crying out loud. You're right. But that's not what they did the last time. And so let's get it right this time. Because guess what? You know where that 7, 9, and 1 is tattooed? On the head coach. That's who's got that on him. So
that's why he wanted to win so bad today. He didn't want to have a losing record to start his career as a head coach in the NFL. That's what this was really all about today.
He's headed down to Lower Greenville to get that tattooed on the right cheek of his arse.
Well, and he, at halftime, he decided though, okay, we've had enough. We've seen Dak out there. You heard him saying, oh, Dak could have like the most lead the league in passing yards. Well, if you start making a decision based on that, you got real problems. So they got Dak out of that game. They end up losing that 34-17. And you guys bring up a great point. It's now, and I think all our listeners are wondering, okay, what are they going to do on defense? Is it going to matter? Because Jerry brought it up. I mean, before you came on with the stretch, we were just talking about Jerry's quotes today saying, hey, this goes back. We've had struggles on defense for 5 or 6 years. He even put Dan Quinn in on that because they had so many defensive problems, in the playoffs. So now it comes down to, can they fix this? And, you hear Steven talking about one thing. The other day, Steven's talking about, we've got to come up with an identity. Well, again, who's going to make this hire? Is it, how much say is Schottenheimer going to have? How much is it Steven? How much is it Jerry? I mean, these are some of the questions you have to ask if you're from the Cowboys. Now, I want to bounce this first off Ed, and then I want to now and bounce some of these names off you. Jim Leonard's name's coming up a lot because he's with Denver now, and he used to be at Wisconsin, and he's certainly been a play caller in the past. Brian Flores, because of what he's done with the Vikings and obviously what he's done as a defensive coach for all these years in the league and serving under Belichick with New England. Those are names that come to mind right away. Ed, any other names, or do you want to comment on those names? And then Stretch, I kind of I want you to sound off on when you hear them say, we've got to have an identity, we've got to do something. What do you hear when you hear that? I want you to respond to that. But Ed, what are some names that grab your attention right now?
I think the two you mentioned, Jim Leonard's obviously been a play caller. He's been a head coach at the college level, much like Jeff Hafley at the Green Bay defensive coordinator. You look what the Broncos have done. They're leading the NFL in sacks 2 years in a row, and none of those sacks have come from a first-round draft pick. How amazing is that? Obviously, they're going to win 13 or 14 games. They may be the number one seed. I think you like that approach. He's not the play caller. Vance Joseph is. Kind of the same thing with Brian Flores. The thing that would concern me with Jerry and Brian Flores, and I know he's kind of the number one guy on the list of Cowboys fans from what I can tell on social media. Yeah, he makes a big commitment to, the blitz, and they've had all these multiple sack games and create all kinds of pressure. And that's great. But how does Jerry feel about hiring somebody who's got a lawsuit pending against NFL owners? Jerry sued the NFL owners himself, but I don't know that he thinks everybody should, be forgiven for that. So I don't know how Jerry feels about that. And I don't know how he's going to be out of his contract, but the Vikings have made it very clear. Kevin O'Connell's made it very clear he wants him back there. So is Jerry going to pay a coordinator enough to lure him to leave the Vikings and come to the Cowboys?
No.
What does he think of the personnel here and the future here with the coaching staff here, the ownership set up here? Does he think he's going to win more there than he does in Minnesota? And then I guess Jim Schwartz would be a guy I would think about if he's part of Kevin Stefanski's staff that gets fired in Cleveland. Another guy who's highly aggressive, very creative. I think that's what you're looking for. What Dan Quinn created here for 3 years. Except you want to have postseason success. You want to be able to stop the run game. But those are guys. What about Matt Patricia at Ohio State? He's got ties to Belichick. He's been a head coach in the NFL before. That's always been important to Jerry. So I think there's a lot. And Aiden Durden, who's the defensive coordinator who left here for Seattle 2 years ago. Seattle led the NFL, fewest points allowed. They signed DeMarcus Lawrence, so he has familiarity with the Cowboys personnel, their inner workings here. He merits consideration in my mind, but he's not the play caller.
How about Wink?
Martindale?
Yeah. Just throwing names out. I'm just talking
fine.
about guys. But I think Ed, you make a great point. I think that Schwartz would he would absolutely fit in here, and we're not going to know because we don't know how this coaching cycle is going to go. There are going to be one or two surprises in this scenario where you're just like, what? They did that where? And then you start looking at what those staffs look like. Ultimately, they've got to get better personnel-wise. Now, what the hell was the question you asked me, Mosley? I got my ADD working. What do you want to know?
No.
What do you hear when Jerry says they need an identity, or Steven says they need an identity?
Isn't that what Trayvon said? I mean, I thought that was the same thing Trayvon said after he was. Yeah, you need an identity. I hope this happens sooner rather than later, though. I mean, get the guy in here. Let him go over with the scouting department. What characteristics he's looking for, what measurables he's looking for, all of those things, and allow these guys to hire their staff. And get some guys in here. So I do think definitely you need an identity, but you got to come in and you got to kind of look at what you have. I love what they did today, which was just play everybody, put everybody in the game. I mean, you saw Milton again. His downside has been is that he can't make quick decisions. I mean, they had ran that fake toss and run the seam to the tight end early to span forward in the game. They came and guess what? The linebacker chased it. They came back with it, and the linebacker sat right in the hole and picked it up the second time. So you want to see, I wanted to see him get some playing time, and obviously he's still showing he needs a lot of work. So all of those guys that have had an opportunity will help hopefully either shape what they're going to do moving forward and getting an identity, or they'll play themselves out of the building.
Well, Jerry talked about when he justified the Micah Parsons trade. He talked about, I don't know what you think of this concept of what they've devoted to their defensive tackle situation, 3 $20 million defensive tackles, and he sounds like he's committed to keeping them all. But to me, their personnel problems are so vast that Jerry needs to fulfill the promise he made that, hey, we're going to take advantage of these picks that we got. We're going to take advantage of all this cap space we've created. They need to be aggressive in free agency. Like, you can be smart about it, but you need to get starting players in free agency. Forget all this garbage about trading for guys who are former number one. How many of those guys panned out?
No.
And exactly what we got out of Mingo, right? Well, we had a second-round grade on him. We gave up a fourth for him.
What about
now?
What about Kenny Murray? Played more defensive snaps than anybody on the team, and was a liability for almost every one of them. Elam, they gave up a pick for him because he was a former. Peyton Turner, right? Never even got on the field all year. He's been on IR or whatever he's on. I mean, it's ridiculous. They made a big thing out of, hey, we Solomon Thomas. I guess that wound up being a pretty good move. But for the most part, that's a failed strategy to go sign a bunch of second level, third level free agents on defense, especially, who, because you had high grades on them when they came out in the draft 4 or 5. Like, the thing that surprised me about Kenny Murray, he's probably the most criticized player on defense that wasn't sent to Green Bay during the season, is that Schottenheimer actually said, oh, we brought him in here. He thought he was going to be the will linebacker. That's where he's played his whole career. But we're playing him at the middle line, Mike linebacker. So you're taking a guy who's failed and had bad instincts at his best position, and you're putting him at a more important position where instincts are at a premium, and you expect success? Like, what?
And put the green dot on his helmet, so by the way, he can hear the play and have to call it too, instead of just thinking about it. Yeah, I get it. And let me ask you, what is it with what are the money ramifications with Diggs, since he was claimed off of waivers, since he didn't clear waivers, he was claimed off of waivers. They take that contract, correct?
They do, yeah. And there's no guaranteed money left. I think the Cowboys saved like $12.5, $13 million not to have his contract counting against their cap going forward.
Well, there's some pretty there it is. Be aggressive with your mentality. Be aggressive and smart in free agency.
Yeah, and they'll do what they usually do, is restructure a ton of contracts because they owe big money to all those defensive tackles we were just talking about. If you say the strength of this team, the defense, if there is any strength, it would be up the middle, with Quinnen, Osa. I still don't know if do you need all three of those guys. You got three different people making $20 million a year now. And so I think they have some decisions to make there. They said, let's think about some of the things we were promised. before the season. Hey, man, it's okay. I mean, I know it seems like a big deal letting this great pass rusher go, but I'll tell you what we can do. We can scheme up a pass rush. Well, that was a load of you-know-what. I mean, scheme up a pass rush. Like we were just joking. They literally had to go get a guy off the couch to even provide some of a pass rush. I saw a guy come in there today, and it was like 54. I'm like, oh, guy looks pretty good. I'm like, oh, that's Sam Williams. I'd forgotten he was even on the team. One point I see a guy getting up. It was 13. Oh, it's Fowler. He's still on the team. That's who they thought they could take, and they could scheme up a pass rush. So
I remember when they traded Micah Parsons, they said they could get away with it because they had the deepest group of defensive ends, edge rushers they've ever had.
Yes. Yeah.
They totally misevaluated those players. And let's not forget, as good as the offense has been, they've got decisions to make on the offensive line. They've got an all-pro left guard who's a first-round pick who's playing left tackle because they're not sure about the left tackle they invested a first-round pick in last year.
Yeah.
Man, I'm not disagreeing with what's being said, but I'll say this. I mean, I've watched the secondary and guys that man, you could have four damn Deacon Joneses out there. It wouldn't make they can't cover anybody. I mean, they can't. So just, I mean, you can have all that you want. If you don't have somebody that can play with leverage or reroute some guys, get their hands on some guys, at least play with some sort of defensive secondary technique, I don't give a damn who you got running.
But they invested in Deron Bland, and they invested in Trayvon Diggs, and they drafted Siobhan Ravel, right?
Yeah. They poured a lot into that.
I'll show you when Ravel's in the game 3 games ago, and the guy and they run a switch concept, and he's got that third, and I mean he stands up like a damn jack-in-the-box guy trying to backpedal in there. So they drafted him early. They got work to do, and guess what? The last I checked, if you can't pedal in the NFL, you might want to lay off for 2 weeks and quit.
So, and Ed brought up a good point though on the offensive front. Now you've got one of your best offensive linemen. He seemed to kind of indicate when he was asked about it, he's like, I'm like the best in the league at this one thing, and you're going to ask me to go out there. And I think basically,
you feel me, dog?
Yeah, you feel me, dog?
Pro left guard. You feel me, dog?
And I think he's also saying you might want to redo my deal. You might want to redo my deal if you get me out there at left tackle. And it looks like Booker put up huge numbers. I mean, they the guy that was supposed to be their starting left tackle, they don't know what he's going to be moving forward. And it looks like they'll probably move on from their right tackle. So this is a team that loves drafting offensive linemen in the first round. Just see 5 of the last 7 drafts or something like that. But this year needs to be, as somebody was saying, you need to look up by round 6 and make sure that those first 5 rounds you've taken a defensive player every single time. And of course, Scout, Stretch, you being a longtime scout, you know how it's not how it works.
Didn't they do that for Dan Quinn his first year? Almost the entire draft was devoted to defense. I think that's where they are again.
Yeah,
I thought you were saying when you filmed me, dog, you were wanting Stretch to bark like the Allstate guy. I ain't doing it. Not going to do it, Ed.
Oh, man. Well, the Cowboys lose another one, 34-17. I mean, the one thing that made no sense to me was this. Ed, it's interesting what you said about the head coach saying he didn't want to have a losing season. And even Dak got tied into that. I don't want to have a losing season. It was crazy to be out there risking things to go 8-1. Like it meant a lot of stuff. Like the Giants got themselves in big trouble today. And maybe they'll feel great going to the offseason, but the Giants went from potentially having the number 1 overall pick to potentially now having the number 7 pick. Or at best, Ed, I think it's the 5th pick overall is the best they can. So it'll be interesting. And now, of course, the one of the leading broadcasters out there will get to help the Raiders make the 1st pick overall. And I think we all know what the Raiders need there. And so maybe that'll be Fernando Mendoza out of Indiana. All right, Ed, do we have anything? I know Stretch needs to get going, get moving. Do you have anything else for Stretch? Oh, Stretch, I mean, people want to hear your take on the special teams. We don't have our old buddy to beat up on anymore, old Bones Fossil. But there's some people that think Sorensen may have seen his last days as special teams coach here. Ed, Stretch, there was that moment today where the kicker just kind of kicked one about 8 yards or 10 yards. And that was a strange moment. They've had trouble with their coverage. Even the kicker's missing kicks now. I think he's fine. Okay, I would not think about doing anything with the kicker.
Well, good. You better sign him because his contract's up too.
I know.
He's worth 150 points a season.
Yeah. Stretch ready to make some changes along those special teams unit.
Well, I mean, you didn't get the production that you had gotten with Bones Fossil. I mean, this guy makes him look like Lombardi, comparing out loud. So, yeah, I mean, I think, Turpin had a good return today, but you just haven't gotten the production. I've always said that, it's as important part of the game as any other part of the game. And they did not get the production out of that unit this year. And I'm never going to get on here. I've had my ass fired over there, and I know what it's like. So you're never going to hear me get on here and say, let's move on from this guy or move on from that guy. But certainly he did not have a good year. Coach Sorensen did not have a good year with the special team. So a lot of that has to do with the players too. Guess what? They are lacking in that standpoint. So, where they go, who knows? But I think it's going to be fast because I think we're going to find out real quick the direction this team's going.
Well, I think the interesting thing to me is like how many head coaching vacancies are there going to be in the NFL? There's a lot of people who think there aren't a lot of really attractive replacements, and so we might not get to the usual 6 or 8. But of those who are hired for head coaching vacancies this hiring cycle, how many have deals already put in place with, the coordinators the Cowboys might be interested in, and how do the Cowboys overcome a new coach is going to be able to offer a coordinator maybe a 6-year deal, a 5-year deal? Is Jerry going to offer a coordinator a 5-year deal with the kind of turnover that they've had at that position?
No.
Is Jerry going to pay a coordinator at the top of the market? Because Shoddy's probably not being paid at the top of the coordinator market.
Right. No, you make a good point. I mean, it's not like we could just say, hey, let's go out here and get, let's go out here and hire this guy, or let's make sure we got this guy at the top of the list. I mean, there are a lot of different variables to it. I like the point you make. You and I talk about it often. I mean, you don't. I aggravate the hell out of you. Hey, how many you think they're going to be this year, Ed? And you're like, oh, God, Stretch calling me again. You want to know how many head coaches we think's going to be? I mean, it's always kind of the same in that cycle between 6 and 8. And then, like you said, I mean, if Cleveland – if they do go, that probably would be my first call, would be to Jim Schwartz to say, hey, what would it take, to get you over here? So we'll have to see. And in the next probably 48 hours, we're going to see a lot of movement, and we'll know a direction, probably by Wednesday, is to at least come up with some decent names as to where they may go. I agree with you, though. There's a lot of influx when you start talking about, well, is the guy from Indiana University going to be thrown around as a head coach in the NFL? Is Phillip Rivers' name going to be thrown around as a head coach in the NFL? I mean, there's people that are casting some long lines and deep nets.
I was out on a tarmac one time waiting for Mike Zimmer to get back, and he turned down the job at Nebraska. And that was a time, and I know this was shocking for Jerry to have to pay him $1 million on that side of the ball. And then Sean Payton turned down Al Davis in the Raiders job and his number was up to $1 million from $500K. That was at a time I think Jerry thought, how in the world have I gotten to this point? And to get somebody like Flores of his ilk, we're talking $5-6 million, which Jerry doesn't even like paying that to a head coach. He doesn't even, I think the thing
he's not going to pay that. That'd be more than Schottenheimer makes, isn't it?
I would think so.
Yeah, I know it sickened Jerry when Ben Johnson, who, by the way, Jerry did not talk to when they had a head coaching opening, and all some of these other guys that have been incredible this year. Ben Johnson got $13 million to become the new Chicago head coach. That kind of thing, as a first-time head coach, absolutely sickens Jerry, because quite honestly, he doesn't think coaches or should be paid that and aren't that important at the end of the day.
But you can watch those coaches work in the playoffs. while he's trying to hire new coaches.
That's true.
I'd tell you, Mosley, since you're usually standing right there behind him, scratching his trap, why don't you ask that question the next time around? Maybe his mentality will change.
I've run out of games. I can't be back there. Although, Clarence has really been blocking me out of being as close as I need to be to get some of those questions in. Guys, I appreciate y'all. I want to wish you a happy New Year. Stretch, your mom's been fighting illness during the holidays. We're thinking about her, and let her know the Doomsday Podcast sends us best. I know both of you guys are appreciative of our great and devoted audience out there. They were very angry at us, Ed, for taking off Christmas, but we're back. We're back, and we'll provide them with a great off season of interviews and all kinds of things to line up. But thank you both. I appreciate it. Ed, any final thoughts?
I just look forward to whatever they do at the start of this week. We could be reconvening this very quickly to discuss major changes in the Cowboys coaching hierarchy over there.
Should I look real quick to just make sure they haven't fired Eberflus yet? Golly. This is as we record this, it's just about an hour after the game, but so far nothing. We'll have an emergency podcast if we need one. Watch Stretch tonight at 10:30 with Joe Trahan on Sports Special WFAA. Watch Ed tomorrow morning 6:30. Either get to work early or watch it before you go to work. And what's our man?
Stretch and I need to switch shifts once in a while.
Yeah, I tell you what. The next time you have that thought, I want you to take your right pinky, go to the top of the keyboard, and hit the damn delete key, please. I ain't getting up at no daggone 6 o'clock in the morning.
Get up at 6. It's 4:45.
Yeah.
The show's at 6.
Are you on a first name basis over there at the Waffle House going into the facility?
It's too dangerous.
Well, I think Stretch needs to meet this Istook. This Istook's a nice guy. He does a good morning show. So anyway, Ed, Stretch, thank you all very much. Great to be with you, and all our great and committed followers. We'll be back with you soon, and when something breaks, we'll jump in and react to it. It is the Doomsday Podcast for Glenn Stretch Smith and Ed Werder. I am Matt Mosley. We'll see you next time.
We are Rogue Media Sports.